Yo, what is happening, friendly ghost friendlies and non-friendlies? How's everybody doing? We got some new avatar information on the fighting game. I already seen it, but we're going to go over it, review it, watch it in silence first.
Avatar Legends, the fighting game, is a 4-button fighter with each button completely unique in its own purpose. Each of the buttons will do something different whether you're standing, crouching, or in the air. The A button is usually your quickest attack, easily countering slower ones. The B button tends to be slightly stronger with more range. The C button is your heavy attack that will do massive damage. And the flow button by itself goes into the flow stance, which automatically guards all incoming attacks. The flow button with directional inputs provides unique movement options that can be used for evasion, counterattacks, and more. For Aang, his flow moves represent his ability to weave and maneuver in a variety of ways on the ground and in the air. Knowing when and where to use each of these moves is the key to victory. As Aang once said, the past can be a great teacher. Sign up for the closed alpha test now, and don't forget to wishlist Avatar Legends, the fighting game, on Steam.
There are a few things in this trailer that were revealed to us, and one of the first things I noticed is that there is air teching, which you notice right here. Core does an air tech, and that is very, very big information right here. The fact that you can tech in the air. What are the parameters for teching? Is it when you get close to the ground? This is the type of hit that you take? The type of... What are the parameters for being able to tech something? But that also indicates that maybe there's a bit more strategic implementation here. You may choose to go for damage, but you may not get the knockdown. You allow them to tech in the air. And maybe sometimes you can prioritize, piling on the offense, but you sacrifice damage to try to achieve that, to get the knockdown, right? So anyways, that's just something that was, blatantly clear about this, is that there's air teching. And also, if you notice, if you paid attention to the trailer, there's like a sound effect when it happens. And it's the same sound effect that plays out when they do the flow, I'm about to say flow chart. When they do the flow stance, it's a 3-button game with the flow stance being pretty much a parry, right? Pretty much a, the Street Fighter 6 drive parry-esque type of thing. Hold the flow stance, and seemingly, you hold the flow stance, and seemingly it gets everything. Lows, mids, highs, overheads. They simply state that it gets all attacks. They don't say... go into too much detail. That's all that we have about it. How much time, how wide is the window for the flow stance? Let's be real, just call it the flow parry. How much leeway do you have for that? And that also brings into question, like, is that going to be overpowered? Like, is this going to get everything? You're just going to evade everything? I noticed something in a previous trailer. It's when Aang did that to Korra, and Korra did the flow stance parry-esque maneuver. Korra was not at advantage. She was still on the defensive. So she had to do a double parry, as a double flow stance, if you will. Because it still was not her turn. And so that, my natural thought process when I saw this was like, how strong is this? Because it seems like it's going to be very powerful, right? Like, how are you going to open somebody up? Like a throw seems like the most obvious choice to beat it. But what else? Like, is that going to be the only downside? But what if, and when we watch it back, Core opens up with whatever that move is. My theory that the flow stance leaves you at a disadvantage, but it just gives you time to clear your mind and try to think. Aang, actually, they kind of recover about the same time here. So maybe it also depends on what type of move the offensive player throws out as well. Because if we just play it back frame by frame, we see Core throws out what looks like to be a pretty big attack. Right? It looks like a running attack or a dash attack. Move it along a little bit. And we notice Aang goes into his idle stance before Korra does. And there's a bit of it seems like the screen kind of freezes here. Actually, the screen freezes right here. But Aang returns to his idle stance before Korra does right here. And then Korra begins to return to her idle stance immediately after, like she's still recovering here. Still recovering. Or maybe she's already recovering. She's going into crouch. So she recovers right here. And Aang seems like Aang doesn't really move. Like his idle stance doesn't have any movement. Like his clothes, he doesn't flow until Korra is recovered. So maybe it looks like they kind of recover at the same time. So my theory still stands. Like, I think that the flow stance, the parry version, which you do it from neutral, I believe it doesn't give you advantage of a parry, but rather it just gives you time to kind of clear your mind and perhaps create space. Because even though Korra threw out a big attack, they still recovered pretty much at the same time. And Korra even took her turn back. So, that speaks volumes right there. She took her turn back. She goes for a low. Now, this one's where it gets pretty interesting, even more interesting. This time she does a low attack. And Aang does a parry again. This time, the parry is also successful, but it puts Aang in the air. It puts him in the air. Now, immediately, my thought process was, that's pretty interesting. Going with the theory that I have. Of course, they're going to reveal the information to us, and I'm just speculating because it's fun. If you are at disadvantage from doing the flow stance, and doing a low attack causes Aang to go into the air, it doesn't seem like you have control over how the parry plays out. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But yeah, this is the first time we've seen a low attack, and a low attack being parried puts Aang into the air, into the skies, at disadvantage. So my thought process is immediately like, that's one big glaring weakness right there. The offensive player could essentially control the defender if they just choose to go for the flow stance. So even though it's a kind of a get out of jail free card, what if you can still manipulate the defender's next action? In a sense, her going for the low attack and him going for the parry guaranteed that his next action would come from the air. Meaning, Aang now has to deal with Korra at advantage. Like, Aang is still doing the parry stance. The glow thing hasn't worn off yet. Korra looks like she's on the way to recovering. They might recover at the same time. I don't know. I don't remember. Korra recovered. So Korra is recovered right here. Or maybe right here. I don't know if there's like standing or, recovering from crouching. I don't know. But let's say right here, she's recovered. Aang is still recovering from his flow stance parry or counter or whatever we want to call it. He's still recovering. Korra has recovered already. That is pretty interesting to me because it doesn't seem like it's a get out of jail free card, and it seems like there's a bit of strategy here. It doesn't seem like it gives you advantage for doing a successful parry. It just gives you a chance to kind of think about your next action, gives you time, gives you a bit of space. But if you really wanted to take a defensive stance, you're going to have to perhaps not rely on that. You know, maybe you just do that to try to, you know, gain some sort of resource or something else. I don't know. But it seems like there's a bit of strategy involved in this. So Aang is stuck in the air. We don't know if he can guard in the air or not. Again, my thought process is if he's in the air, he's fucked. He's fucked. Korra is ready for him, looking at him, and he's ready to kill. But perhaps you can do flow stance shenanigans from the air out of a successful parry. You know, so maybe he's not completely screwed here. But from what we can observe here, it seems as though you can manipulate the defender's actions if they decide to play it safe and go for the get out of jail free parry. Maybe you can manipulate what they do next. Korra could just, if she has a DP, she can just destroy Aang right here. She destroys him right here. Go for a super. If I don't know how supers work, maybe they're invincible, maybe they're not. But theoretically, this sequence right here, Aang went for the parry the first time. Standing parry, it just creates space. She goes for a second time. It's a low, forces Aang into the skies. Aang is screwed at this point, right? He's especially screwed at this point because he committed to an attack. Game, set, and point. And that's a layer of strategy that I'm intrigued about. Everything I could have just said could be completely bullshit. Could be. But just observing the footage, that's what it looks like is happening here. And I like that. My second thought is like, okay, that is, you know, that is a glaring weakness if this is the case. But I still don't know if that is enough of a weakness. Of course, Korra took the hit right there. I think that was just them just, you know, she obviously could have blocked or done anything. They're just showing like a tutorial. Even though that seems like it is a big glaring weakness, assuming that it is universally like this across the board and low attacks causes, you know, the same thing that we just saw. If that is universal, that is a humongous glaring weakness. But, you know, we can assume that you can perhaps do flow state actions out of the air to like try to retreat, you know, something like that. But then at that point, you're still, you know, it's still like the offensive player is kind of playing you like a fiddle at this point, you know. So that is a pretty big ass weakness if that is the way that it works. But even still, I think that it is going to cost meter. I still think it's going to cost meter. Because it is very strong. Admittedly, that is a very strong tool to have. Without knowing anything further, you know, just talking out of my neck at this point. But it seems like it's strong just out of principle. So I do believe that the flow stance parry is going to cost some sort of meter, but I wonder if the flow movement is going to build meter. What if the flow movement builds meter and the flow stance parry costs meter? I think that makes the most sense. Yeah. So we'll watch it back one more time in full speed. Because that was pretty interesting, right? We learned quite a few things from this trailer, this tutorial guide.
Avatar Legends, the fighting game, is a 4-button fighter with each button completely unique in it.
We also see Aang do a invincible move at the start.
Avatar Legends, the fighting.
First of all, he deflects a projectile, right? I completely ignored that part. He reflects the projectile words, goes into flow stance, and does what seems to be some sort of DP.
With each button complete.
And on a side note, I like the way the DP's phrasing. I like the way this move sounds when it hits.
Avatar Legends, the fighting game, is a 4-button fighter with each button.
Right, I like that. I like that sound.
Completely unique.
Another thing worth noticing: sometimes they turn red when they get hit, and it seems to be a counter hit indicator, a counter hit and or a punish indicator.
The fighting game is a 4-button fighter, with each button completely unique in its own purpose. Each of the buttons will do something different whether you're standing.
Right. It doesn't really mean much, but it's just like an indicator. It's something I noticed. Like the first trailer, I was like, why are they turning red like this? And I think that's what's happening.
C button is your heavy attack that will do massive damage. And
A wall splat off of a normal heavy. I can't help but think this game is going to be insane. And I'm excited about that.
the flow button by itself goes into the flow stance, which automatically guards all incoming attacks. The flow button with directional inputs provides unique movement options that can be used for evasion, counterattacks, and more. For Aang, his flow moves represent his ability to weave and maneuver.
C does an air tech way high that time, so it's not when you're near the ground. That's just like after a certain amount of time.
In a variety of ways on the ground. Aang, his flow moves represent his ability to weave and maneuver in a variety of ways on the ground and in the air. Knowing when and where to use each of these moves is the key to victory. As Aang once said, the past can be a great...
I just thought of something. I think air teching might cause meter. I think air teching might cause meter. What if it does? Could be... That's a dangerous route to take. I just hope that it's like like a combo drops out and then you can choose to go for it. I hope you can't just pop out of juggles like that. Let's pray that you can.
Great teacher. Sign up for the closed alpha test now, and don't forget to...
What is this that core does before she gets hit? Yep. Here we go. As he brings a shield out from the ground. But that shit got clapped.
And don't forget to wishlist Avatar Legends, the fighting game, on Steam.
Alright. That's pretty cool. Also, there's one thing that I'm looking forward to the most with this game, and I don't think a lot of people really considered this. It's something that every fighting game gets, but it's kind of like an unsung hero that isn't really talked about. Something that Avatar has never had before, as far as I'm concerned. Color palettes. Avatar is going to get color palettes. And since this is a 2D hand-drawn game, we're probably going to get a lot of unique colorways. Come here. Oh, she's locked up. That's why she's barking at me. Hold up. Yeah, we're going to get a lot of unique colorways. And I think a lot of fans and, the like, when they're disappointed that they're getting a fighting game for the Avatar, I think that's something that they don't really consider, is that there are some unique perks that come with fighting games that you just don't get anywhere else. And to be honest, that's one of the first things that I fell in love with when I started playing fighting games, like when I was a kid, or when I took a liking to fighting games. When I was like 4 to 5 years old, I grew up on Killer Instinct on Super Nintendo, Mortal Kombat, Virtua Fighter. The first thing I fell in love with was characters that I liked having cool color palettes that just made them look distinct and different. Like seeing Liu Kang in like the dark blue headband, the blue headband and the blue side strips on the pants, Raiden in the red gi, and seeing all these colorways, it was just like so cool to me as a kid. It was kind of like getting a fresh pack of cards, or like maybe like Yu-Gi-Oh cards, fresh out of the pack, something that you really like. You get the fresh scent of the cards after you take it out the bag, and it feels all fresh and pristine and clean and nice, and like that's kind of the same feeling that I had when I was a kid and I saw those colors, and I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And You know, that's just one of the first things I fell in love with fighting games, is seeing all the options that comes with it to, you know, kind of distinct, you know, my character from others. And that's something that Avatar is going to get. We're going to see Aang in colors that he's probably never been in. Korra, we're going to see her most likely get some sort of red colorway. And the accent colors, that's what ties it all together, man. The accent colors is what ties it all together. Like, picture Korra with like red and like some white gauntlets and I don't know, you know, just picture something crazy, right? Since this game is going to be hand drawn, and it's not 3D models, we can guarantee that there's going to be plenty of colorways. How many? Don't know, but I'm going to say at least 5+ minimum, and perhaps more. You know, perhaps more. You know, if we're lucky, we get blessed, we'll get many more. But yeah, I think the colorways are going to be the unsung hero, and it's going to be one of those things that you didn't know that you wanted, but when you finally get it, you know, maybe it'll spark that same love that is sparked for me when I was a kid. You know, for people who are getting into fighting games, and you know, don't sleep on it. You'll find some things that you'll love about them that you never knew that you needed or never knew that you wanted. You know, so anyways, that's going to wrap it up for me. They're doing this tutorial series, and you know, I'll stay on the lookout for more when it happens. And my new laptop arrives. So I'm gonna peace out. Peace, much love. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their days. May peace be with. Always keep your heads up. This is Those Posts Audio. Stay cool. If you like this content, be sure to show some love, but always be sure to show that love to the people who matter to you. As ITOwl bidding you farewell, peace, much love, and stay cool. Deuces.